You may think something is wrong with you because life feels heavier than usual. Silence feels deeper and people no longer understand you like they used to. But what if I told you these are not signs of weakness? They are signs your soul is growing stronger. There comes a time when the outer world no longer feeds your inner world. When the distractions of pleasure, praise and possession begin to feel hollow. In that space between letting go and growing up, your soul begins to awaken. But growth is not loud. It does not arrive with applauses. It whispers, it deepens, it roots itself in silence. And the sounds are not what you think. There is a moment in your journey where you begin to feel like you are no longer the same person you once were. People still speak the same way, situations still unfold with the same intensity, the world outside continues its familiar chaos. But something inside of you has shifted. You feel it in your breast, you notice it in the space between your thoughts. There is more room now. This is not something you force. It is something that arises, like the surface of a lake becoming still after the wind dies down. And in that stillness, you begin to see clearly not just what is around you. When someone criticizes you, you don't flare up as quickly. You hear the words, you feel the stirrings, but instead of unleashing your emotions, you watch. You allow the moment to pass through you like wind moving through bamboo. You begin to understand that your energy is sacred, that not every moment requires your engagement, that not every provocation needs a response. This is a sign your soul is becoming stronger, not because it has armored itself, but because it no longer fears being unguarded. The one who observes has already risen above the storm. Reaction is instinctual. It is the echo of survival. But observation, that is consciousness, that is growth. You are beginning to master your mind instead of being mastered by it. When your soul was young, everything was personal. A delay felt like punishment. A rude word felt like an attack. But now you see through it. You understand that most people are not speaking to you, they are speaking from their own pain. And your stillness no longer stems from indifference. It comes from understanding. In the Shaolin tradition, we train the body not just to fight, but to listen, to pause. In every movement, there is a breath. In every breath, a decision. And the greatest strength is not in striking back, but in standing still without being disturbed. When the heart is calm, the mind follows. And when the mind is clear, even the loudest world becomes quiet. You begin to notice that when you feel an emotion arise, anger, fear, sorrow, you breathe into it, you watch it unfold, and you allow it to dissolve. Just as clouds pass across the sky without touching the sky itself, your emotions no longer define your essence. There is profound power in restraint, not the kind that comes from repression, but the kind that arises from awareness. You start to realize that there is a space between stimulus and response, and within that space lies your freedom. Freedom to remain grounded, freedom to stay aligned with your values, freedom to choose not just what to say, but who you become in every moment. This is no longer spiritual theory, it is your lived experience. And you begin to feel it everywhere. In conversations, in disappointments, in the unexpected, you start to smile. Not because life is easier, but because you are no longer enslaved by the noise within. And still the world will test you. That is its nature. But now, you do not fight the tests. You do not curse the difficulties. You understand they are here to show you something, not about them, but about you. About how much mastery you have cultivated. About how much inner peace remains when the outer world is anything but peaceful. The more you observe, the more you realize you are the awareness that watches them. You are not the storm. You are the mountain that stands through it. And it is from this mountain that you begin to see the value of silence, the power of restraint, and the beauty of a soul that no longer dances to every disturbance. There is a sacred transformation that occurs when solitude begins to feel like home. For most of the world, silence is something to be avoided, moved with noise, distraction, and movement. But when your soul starts to grow stronger, something unusual happens. Silence stops being frightening. In fact, it becomes comforting. What used to feel like emptiness is now a gentle space of renewal. You are no longer afraid to be alone, not because you have given up on connection, but because you have discovered the most essential connection, the one between your breath and your being. There is no longer a need to escape into other people, into social media, into conversations that drain you. You begin to seek solitude, not out of sadness, but out of reverence. In solitude, the masks fall away. The noise within becomes visible. And at first it is not easy. You begin to hear your own thoughts more clearly, the doubts, the cravings, the restlessness. But over time, your inner world starts to settle. The mind is like a cup of muddy water. If left still, the sediment begins to sink and clarity returns. This is what solitude offers, a stilling of the chaos, a return to what is real. And what is real is not out there. It is inside you. You begin to notice the difference between being alone and being lonely. Loneliness is the ache of needing someone else to complete you. Solitude is the peace of realizing you were never incomplete. As your soul strengthens, you stop seeking constant company. You become your own companion. You walk slower, you eat with more awareness. You notice the details that others overlook. The movement of the sun on your skin. These are not just poetic observations. They are signs that your awareness is sharpening and your soul is tuning itself to the frequency of presence. In the Shaolin tradition, monks spend many hours in silence, not as punishment but as purification. Words are powerful, yes, but so is stillness. And in stillness, the truth becomes louder. You begin to realize how much of your former identity was shaped by the opinions, expectations, and energy of others. You absorbed their moods, you echoed their values, you carried burdens that did not belong to you. But now is simple, direct, and unshakable. You are no longer trying to be light. You are trying to be real. And that shift changes everything. You begin to enjoy your own company, not in arrogance, but in wholeness. You sit in silence and smile, not because there is something happening, but because nothing needs to happen. That peace is enough. You realize that the need for constant entertainment, endless validation, and external noise was a symptom of inner disconnection. But now, as your soul grows in strength, you are remembering who you are without the world constantly pulling at you. And as you find peace in solitude, something paradoxical occurs. You become more available to others, not out of need, but out of fullness. You are no longer entering relationships to be saved. You are entering them to share, to uplift, to witness. And it is only from this place of inner stillness that you can truly offer anything of value to the outer world. So when solitude no longer feels like absence, but presence, when you find yourself turning down noise and turning towards silence, it is not a sign that you are retreating from life. It is a sign that you are finally living it from the inside out. And it is from this deep, quiet presence that old attachments begin to fall away. As your soul grows stronger, something subtle but profoundly unsettling begins to unfold. You start losing interest in the things that once consumed you. People you once chased now feel distant, not because they changed, but because you did. Habits you once clung to begin to feel heavy, outdated, or even meaningless. The conversations that once brought you excitement now echo with a strange hollowness. It's not that the world has shifted, but your inner compass has. And this realignment quietly pulls you away from what no longer aligns with your deeper truth. At first it can feel like loss, a heaviness in the heart, a quiet sadness. You may find yourself grieving the very things you once prayed to keep. A friendship that no longer resonates, a job that paid well but drained your spirit. Even the image of who you thought you were, the identity built over years of survival, performance, and external approval, begins to dissolve. It is uncomfortable. You may question your direction. You may feel empty. But this emptiness is not the absence of meaning. It is the space being cleared for something far more real. In the Shaolin tradition, we understand that growth requires letting go. Just as a snake must shed its skin to survive, the soul must release its past attachments to become whole. We are not meant to carry everything forward. The stronger the soul becomes, the lighter it travels. And that lightness often comes at the cost of letting go of things we once thought we could not live without. But now you begin to see the truth. What is meant for your evolution will remain. What was built on fear, control, or illusion will fade. Not out of cruelty, but out of grace. You no longer need to hold on so tightly. Your worth is no longer found in the things or people you attach to. You begin to recognize how many of your past connections were rooted in mutual wounding, not mutual growth. And in that recognition, the ties loosen. You begin to forgive, not always because they deserve it, but because you deserve to be free. You realize that keeping certain people in your life requires you to shrink, to dimp, to walk on eggshells. And as your soul strengthens, that becomes unbearable. This part of the past can feel lonely because it is a passage not many speak of. Society celebrates gaining more friends, more money, more success, but rarely does it honor the sacred art of release. And yet, release is where your transformation begins. You are not becoming empty, you are becoming clear. The fog of dependency, of distraction, of false identity is lifting. And in that clarity, your soul breathes more freely. You may look around and find that your circle is smaller, your schedule quieter, your desires simpler. This is not regression, this is refinement. You no longer chase what glitters, you are drawn instead to what is real. Integrity becomes more valuable than approval. Peace becomes more attractive than drama. Silence becomes more nourishing than noise. And from this place of inner spaciousness, something remarkable happens. You start attracting people and experiences that match your vibration, not your past wounds. So as the old falls away, not in one dramatic event, but in small, almost imperceptible shifts, do not rush to replace it. Sit in the space, trust the clearing, and remember, a tree does not mourn its fallen leaves. It lets them go, knowing that new growth is only possible when the old is released. And it is in this clearing, in this gentle shedding, that you begin to realize peace is more important than being right. When your soul begins to mature, your priorities quietly rearrange themselves. What once felt like a victory, being right, having the last word, proving your point, starts to feel like a disturbance to your inner stillness. Not because you suddenly lose your intelligence or strength, but because you realize peace is not something to be won from others. It is something to be protected within. This awareness does not come loud. It is not taught in debate or in school. It arises only through experience. Through the exhaustion of argument, the hollowness of being correct but disconnected, and the subtle ache that lingers even after you've won an emotional battle. Your soul reaches a threshold where you must ask yourself, is this tension worth it? Is this truth worth disturbing my spirit? In the Shaolin tradition, there is great emphasis on discernment, not just of action, but of energy. There is strength in silence, just as there is courage in restraint. We train not to strike, but to know when not to. The same principle applies in relationships, in discussions, in daily life. You begin to see that not every misunderstanding needs clarification. Not every disagreement needs resolution. And this doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise. Because only a weak flame reacts to the wind. A strong fire contains itself. There is a quiet dignity in walking away, not from life, but from entanglement. The more you grow inwardly, the less you are tempted to prove yourself outwardly. You realize that truth does not scream. It does not demand agreement. Truth, like water, simply flows. It finds its level and nourishes all who are ready to receive it. And so when someone misjudges you, misunderstands you, or misrepresents your intention, you no longer rush to explain yourself. You allow them their perception and you preserve your peace. Because your inner state has become more valuable than external validation. The ego wants to be seen, to be right, to be applauded, but the soul only wants to be in harmony. It seeks balance, not recognition. This shift is not something you can fake. It comes only after you've tasted the emptiness of ego victories. When the applause dies down and your heart still feels unsettled, you begin to question what truly matters. And over time, as your soul strengthens, you begin to favor calm over control. You become less reactive, less rigid, and more attuned to the subtle energy of every exchange. You listen more, speak less, you observe, you smile, and, when necessary, you step back. Choosing peace over being right doesn't mean you abandon your values. It means you express them with grace. It means you know when your words will bring healing and when they will only stir more noise. It means your energy is no longer at the mercy of other people's chaos. You are no longer addicted to conflict disguised as passion. You don't need to teach lessons through confrontation. Instead, you teach through presence, through stability, through becoming a living example of self-mastery. Others may not understand your silence. Let them. Others may accuse you of avoidance. Let them. Because when your soul is anchored in peace, you no longer require external understanding to feel secure. And something beautiful begins to happen when you stop needing to be right. You begin to see more clearly. You listen not to defend, but to understand. You engage not to win, but to connect. You begin to recognize the pain behind harsh words, the fear behind anger, the confusion behind control, and this seeing. You don't have to compromise your truth to protect your peace. You simply learn how to express it with fewer words and deeper presence. And as this peace becomes your priority, your practice, and your posture, something deep inside starts to shift. A sense of wholeness emerges, not because life becomes easier, but because you are no longer split between proving and being. You have nothing to defend, because you are no longer at war with yourself. And in that spacious stillness, you begin to feel a deeper connection, not just to others, but to all of life itself. There is a beautiful paradox that begins to unfold as your soul grows stronger. You become more rooted in yourself, and yet more open to the world around you. Not in the way of attachment or identity, but in a quiet sense of connection that runs deeper than words, deeper than logic. You no longer feel the need to escape yourselves, nor do you feel the urge to escape others. Instead, you start to feel at home, within your own skin, within your own breast, and within the greater fabric of life itself. The boundaries between me and them, between self and other, begin to soften. Not disappear, but dissolve into a deeper awareness that everything is part of one vast breathing organism. You feel more grounded because you are no longer swayed by every emotion, opinion, or passing trend. You have come to know yourself, not the surface identity, but the quiet center underneath it all. The place where stillness lives. The place where your being simply is without needing to perform, adjust, or prove. And this inner rootedness makes you calm. It makes you stable. But this groundedness does not isolate you. It connects you. Because the moment you stop needing the world to approve of you, you become free to truly engage with it. From this place of inner depth, you begin to sense the sacredness in all things. The tree is no longer just a tree, it becomes a teacher in stillness. The stranger on the street is no longer invisible, they become a reflection of shared humanity. Even your past, with all its pain and uncertainty, begins to feel less like a burden and more like a bridge. You start to listen differently, you start to speak with more intention, you feel more, but you suffer less. The suffering that once came from resistance has been replaced with presence. In Shaolin teachings, the lotus is often used as a symbol. It grows in muddy water, yet rises pure and untouched above the surface. And the same applies to the soul. The stronger it becomes, the more it can remain centered while still fully immersed in the complexity of the world. You learn to engage without being entangled. You walk into a room and feel its energy, not to judge it, but to harmonize with it. Not to change people, but to uplift through your own alignment. This sensitivity is not a weakness, it is a gift. And when rooted in presence, it becomes a source of quiet strength. As your soul grows, empathy expands. You become more aware of the interconnectedness of all life, not just in theory, but in direct experience. You feel it when someone is in pain, even if they don't speak it. You sense it in the silence between words, in the tension behind someone's eyes. And you no longer rush to fix, to correct, to advise. Sometimes you simply offer your presence. Your stillness becomes a mirror in which others can find themselves. You start to see that you are not separate from the world. You are a thread in the great tapestry of existence. And this realization doesn't make you float away. It makes you care more deeply, but your care is no longer anxious or controlling. It is rooted, it is quiet, it moves like water, not fire. You give what you can, and you release what is not yours to carry. This is true compassion, grounded in clarity and connected by love. And in this space where you are fully yourself, yet deeply connected to all, you no longer seek enlightenment as an escape. You begin to see it as an embodiment, a return, a quiet living of truth in the simplicity of each breath, each step, each interaction. And from this grounded, open-hearted awareness, you naturally begin to reflect on what has changed within you and what continues to unfold beyond the surface. You may not have noticed it, but something inside you has already shifted. You no longer chase the noise of the world the way you once did. You have begun to slow down, to breathe deeper, to see beyond appearances. You are learning to watch without reacting, to be alone without feeling lonely, to release without resisting, to choose peace over pride, and to stand rooted in your being while feeling more connected to all life. These are not just spiritual ideas. These are the signs gentle, invisible signs that your soul is growing stronger. And strength, as taught in the Shaolin tradition, does not always roar. Often, it is the quiet presence that endures, the still gaze that sees clearly, the calm decision to walk away from chaos, not in fear but in self-respect, to walk the middle path between attachment and avoidance. This is where the soul finds balance. This is where growth becomes transformation. The Buddha once said, "As a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame." Let this be your reminder. Growth does not announce itself, but it leaves footprints. Your choices, your reactions, your presence. So start today, not by moving, but by seeing more aware. Ask yourself, what have I outgrown? What am I holding on to that no longer reflects who I am becoming? And listen, not for an answer from the world, but for a whisper from within. I thank you for walking this path with me, even for a few minutes. May the calm within you grow stronger than the chaos around you. May your journey inward bring light to every step you take outward. Until next time, walk gently, breathe deeply, and live consciously. Your presence here is valued. Your growth is sacred.